Hello all, good afternoon. Welcome to Barbershop Convo Series presented by Cut City Unisex, located right here at 13615 Farmers Boulevard in Jamaica, New York. Thank you, Nicole Llewellyn, owner of Cut City Unisex, for giving us this platform to bring awareness to issues that affect our communities, in particular communities of color. My name is Sabrina Celestin, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm a health, wellness, and financial literacy advocate with over 20 years of experience servicing communities of color. And today we are here with a panel of a group of amazing people, each with a unique and robust, powerful message that I hope will ring the alarm for some of our viewers today. Our episode today is on voting and what you need to know about this upcoming election. So I'm going to introduce some of our panel members, and they're going to give you a brief introduction on themselves and why it's so important, why this election is so important this year. Our first person I'd like to introduce is Miss Latoya Benjamin, who I believe is a native of Queens, who holds a master's. Will give us a little bit more about that, and who also ran for councilwoman. Next to Miss Benjamin is our great Honorable Senator James Sanders from the 10th Senate District, and is also a proud veteran, which I found out. So I'm going to give you each an opportunity to give a little bit more details about yourself. Latoya.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Sabrina.
Same here.
For inviting us to have this conversation. Again, my name is Latoya Benjamin, lifetime resident here, South Strategy, Southeast Queens. I love my community. I'm a proud product of public education. I received my associates from CUNY, liberal arts and science. I have a bachelor's in public administration. I have a master's in urban policy, and I actually just went back to school for international affairs. So, political scientist, urban planner. And very passionate about economic development, policy, and how we leverage government to improve our climate. So really looking forward to having this conversation with my big friends.
I'm Senator James Sanders Jr., born in the Hamilton houses. I'm as Queens as you can get. I did Marine Corps, it's a short version. I am the state senator. I'm a historian. I specialize in the African. What happened to the African American after 1865? What's going on with us? In a few days, I will be taking my final test, and I will join her. I will have a master's degree in just a few days, assuming that I pass this test. And I'm glad to be here. And if anyone likes my haircut, I got it at this barbershop just a few minutes ago. So if you need that serious cut, then you need to come in here.
Yes.
They're not just giving conversation, they're giving cuts.
Welcome both. And last but not least, we do have someone that would be streaming in a few, as once we get her on the screen. Kay Llewellyn, who's a business owner from Texas and who also ran for councilwoman in her state. So welcome all, and I'm hoping that we're able to engage our audience with a robust conversation about what this election means to our community, especially community of color. So with that said, I'm going to start off with you, Ms. Benjamin. How has your understanding of voter engagement changed throughout your studies and your work in this area?
That was such a great question. I read it. Immediately, I thought the first time I registered to vote was when I think I was applying for my permit when you go to the DMV. And on the application, I went to, check the box. And I didn't know what Republican or Democrat meant, but I didn't understand the word independent. And so I went to check independent because I didn't understand the other two words. And there was a staff that worked at the DMV at the time who was a Black woman. And she said, no, you can't check the box. I said, well, what box do I check? And she said, you have to check this 7K. So that's how I became a registered, Democrat. And then my first time actually voting was, of course, when we were all excited, being a millennial and being in college at the time, a young person in college who was with Obama, right? We were super excited. Standing on a very long line at PS223 right here in our community, and voting for Obama. And it was a great feeling of hope and change and excitement. And we just knew, especially being in college and coming out of college, you just know you're going to change the world, right? And so we moved forward with that. I moved forward in that spirit. And then as you learn and you grow, and you experience life, and you start to see, the dynamic. And so after that, I think our daily life. And how does it show? How does my vote show up, in my community? How does it show up, in the resources that I'm able to provide for our community? How does it show up in support of other political leaders in our community? And so, those are some of the questions that I started to ask myself as I started to these skills.
Would you like to add?
Absolutely. Now, my father was one of the last of the sharecroppers. He was coming out of South Carolina. My mother, a domestic coming out of Alabama, and they went through pure hell. And to them, voting was a sacred thing. Voting was one of the most important things that we could do because it was something that we had been deprived of forever. So from day one, I was led by the hand and shown what a voting machine is and people let me know that when it was my time, it was expected in our household that we would partake. They were not allowed to vote. So voting in that sense came easy. When I reached a period of political consciousness and I understood the differences of the people running and the different parties and the different things, well, I also understood that you still have to participate. You have to figure out where do you fit in that political spectrum and what are you going to do. And that's why this vote election this year is well, the only difference is, I would argue, this is the most important election I've seen in my entire life.
Yes.
It's probably one of the most important elections in American history, where this country is absolutely going someplace. And the places are starkly different. They're not even in the same category. So voting is a critical thing. And you see, that's why I can come and do the Barbershop Convo Series, because when you're looking for people who are serious, you start first in the barbershop. You start first in that Unisex, where Sister Nicole and our incredible moderator is going to be there, because they're not going to let you just say anything and just walk out there. You want a haircut, yeah, but if you want some conversation, then you better come right, or you will be checked here.
Thank you, Yvette. Senator Sanders, I just wanted to just pick your brain a little bit, like elaborate a little bit further into why you believe that in your lifetime, my lifetime, why this is such a pivotal moment. This election is so pivotal, and why we need to be aware of the issues concerning our community. And I also want to ask you a question to piggyback off of what you said earlier about voting and understanding the different parties, because you kind of were not given a choice. You were told to pick this. And I want to make sure that, you're able to share your thought and how you felt that you were not given that choice and you were told to pick, now that you're older, right? So first with Senator Sanders, in terms of why this is such a pivotal election and why we need to be paying attention to it.
You have two different parties, two different directions. You have one person who had said that they want to be a dictator on on day one. They want to get rid of certain rights and certain people. This is an incredible change. You also have gone through a period where on January 6th, several years ago, you had an attempt to overturn, to do a coup against the American people. This has never happened before. There's always been a peaceful transfer of power. You had one person who came up with incredible lies and said, this election was fake, we need to overturn it. We need to do whatever we will to overturn it. And they came closer than we would like. And the violence that they speak of, that what they want to do to their enemies, how people who are different with them are vermin, how they are demonizing people. These folk are talking about possible fascism in the U.S. This is vastly different than anything that we've heard so far. And under those conditions, you're actually battling for democracy. I will remind people that when America gets a cold, we get involved. And whatever is going to happen, we're going to get it worse than anyone else. And under those conditions, I'd rather stop a fire when it's miles from my house than have to fight inside my house. So to me and to a lot of people, this election is a game changer. One way or another, this game has changed. God willing, we will go with a person who we can put some pressure on. I have my critique of Vice President Kamala Harris. Does she walk with water? Absolutely not. However, compared to the other guy, it's not even, you can't even compare it. It's just in a whole different league. Whoever would be against that person, I would be for. If Biden was still around, I would go with Biden. If there was no other choice, if Jill Stein was around, I would go with Jill Stein if there was no better choice. If Cornel West were around and he was that choice, I would go with him. But we have to stop this type of demagogue, this type of strong man. They've already shown what they can do. People didn't think that you can get rid of human reproduction, but they did with this getting rid of Roe versus, and we really have to take these people at their words. They say they're going to do stuff. We need to stop saying, oh, he's just talking loud. Why don't we just believe him?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Latoya. Just to go back with how you were not given a choice, and I feel like with this election, if we are not cognizant and we do not initiate our rights to vote, that's something that's possibly on the chopping block for us. So if I could just go back to how you were first introduced to what voting was, or to a political party, and how that right was initially taken from you, because I'm sure that going in, like you said, you didn't know. You saw the wording, but it was not something that was common knowledge for you, and you were told to choose.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about that?
So it was fine. I think I started learning more because I went to school with John Jay for political science, and I started to understand, it in an academic sense, policy, politics, the whole thing. And I think so in that understanding, I realized that I live in a democratic state, New York State. Some of the leaders who I've interned with or worked with are democratic leaders. So it just made sense. I didn't question it after that. As I started to, I just I'll share this actually. So I ran for office. I had an experience as a grassroots candidate running for office. Senator Sanders' old position actually as a former city council member here in South Extension, those of you that don't know. So I ran for that seat as a grassroots candidate. It was during the pandemic. There was a lot happening and the seat opened up, and I wanted to take a shot at, being a political leader. And that was a great experience running for office and, organizing and doing things like that. We came in fourth. We were able to raise over close to $100,000 in the pandemic. But it was in that space. After that, I actually went overseas for an economic conference with Pan-Africanists from across the world to talk about economic empowerment on a global scale. We were supposed to be there for a week, and the day I was supposed to fly home, the pandemic hit, and they shut down the airlines. And so my 1 week stay turned into a 4-month experience in East Africa. And it was the first time in my lifetime in the continent. And so it was there that I got a chance to learn and see different corporations on the international scale and how businesses and countries are operating and building and growing and modernizing. And so when I got back home, so and I saw politics, the news, what they share in the news overseas is different from what we see on TV. And so it kind of opened up my mind to what politics looks like on an international scale and what power and regimes, and it just opened up my mind to a whole different world. And so going back to your comment, so I think where we are in space and time in terms of power in New York State, it is democratic. It could potentially change, but as a millennial, I just want to share, like as a millennial, I think I'm more interested in my interests, who represents my interests in policy, more so than political party affiliation. Unless we can talk about moving forward and we can redefine the morals and values of the parties and how I identify with those morals and values and what that means in terms of political outcomes. If we can evolve in that space, then I think that would work.
Fair enough. In terms of some of like you talked about being on the Economic Council and you saw how internationally, how politics works, right? So in terms of what's going on, the current issues in our state, what do you think are some of the key issues that, whatever candidate is up really needs to focus on that's going to help leverage and build up communities of color? Senator, sorry.
Well, since I have been blessed to be the senator of the 10th Senatorial District, the talented 10th, where we are now, I will speak to the needs of the 10th Senatorial District. In no particular order, I would say we need affordable housing. We need to own the homes that we live in. We also need access to capital. We need the ability to buy and own the businesses in this community. And that means that we need to have the ability to have access to capital. We need to be able to create our own businesses so that we can deal with the issue of jobs and things of that nature. We also need jobs. Yes, we have to deal with the issue of crime. Thank God it's not as bad as it was several years ago, but who wants to go back and move forward? We also have to deal with issues of education. There's several others, but I would suggest to you that those are the most telling, the most harsh ones coming at us that we have to deal with. And incidentally, that's why I am the chair of banking for New York State. This is what our people need more than anything else. This is why I'm on all of the economic committees that the state Senate has, because this is where we need to make a big breakthrough.
Right. And how important do you think it is for just citizens to be actively engaged in local politics? I mean, right now what's happening is it's going to affect us globally, but how important is it, do you think it is for us to be more engaged? Do you think? Do you see an increase, a decline? What's your take on it in terms of engagement?
First, I have to give a context. I will remind you that Malcolm X taught us that the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats is that the Republicans will hang us from a higher branch. So for our interest, we need to look at these things from that point. Sister Latoya's point is very right. We do have to understand our interests. And based on that understanding, we can look at all of the other parties. But it does start within the Bible, says to that speaks and says, people perish. So we need to start by looking at what are our interests: food, clothing, land, things of that nature, education, things that we can consider, or jobs. These are our core interests. From there, we can look at what are the things that we need that will support those interests. Access to capital, some land to build some homes, things of that nature. Um, Trading agreements maybe. Then which of these parties or other parties will give us more of these things? And not so much give, let me change the word. Which of these parties can we negotiate with better? Which of the under Malcolm X taught us that we would trade our vote to the person who would deal with our interests the best. And we need to look at that. That too often we are throwing our votes away by not understanding the issue. I am reminded that via Abu Jamal spoke of, he was speaking, one of our great leaders was speaking about hip hop, and he said, artists can only say, can create ignorant politics. We need to stop looking elsewhere for the solutions to our problems and organize ourselves. Maybe if we had some Barbershop Convo Series, maybe we need to take this to all over the nation. Maybe we need to sit down in a place and talk amongst ourselves and figure out what our issues, what our interests, and figure out who amongst us, including folk who may look like us, who amongst us are pushing for our interests and who's not. But I will add, unless you educate yourself out towards you will hate your friends and love your enemies. That you can't hold anybody accountable if you don't know what they're supposed to do. You have to hold yourself accountable first. Because to the great audience, I would ask them, what's the difference between a council person and a state senator, an assembly person? What's the difference between a district manager and a district leader? What's the difference between a federal senator and a state senator? If we don't know these things, we can't hold them accountable. Who's supposed to do what? And by not being able to hold them accountable, we don't know if they're doing or not. And it would be wrong to say they're all doing great or they're all doing wrong. That's, neither one of those is logical. We need to do a checkup from the neck up. We need to do our own work so that we can hold other people accountable. First, we hold ourselves accountable. Then we can hold our leaders accountable and this system accountable.
So this question could go for either or at this point.
Let's go there.
But where do you think the disconnect is? That we're not understanding I'm going to use your word, from the grassroots, and why the emphasis is not being put so heavily on the local level, so that we can now begin to work on a higher level. Like
That's a very good question, very loaded.
Sorry.
I think a couple of things. I think at the grassroots level, right, we lack education and understanding of how what is a democracy, how democracy works. I mean, again, like I said, I went to school for political science. I can't say I would have this information if I did not study. Right. So I'm clear about that. I think also there's an intentionality to keeping us ignorant. I think the more people, right, education, knowledge is power, right? So I think keeping this information amongst a few keeps certain regimes in power, right? And I think it's to our disinterest because I believe we need to, organize like the grassroots level, educate more people, and then that will be the foundation that real leaders and great leaders need to be able to sustain themselves. Because there's levels to this, right? So, you could have a great senator, right? But how does he stay in power? He can't stay in power with an ignorant constituency base, right? Because he's dealing with, or they are dealing with other regimes and other powers who are not interested in his interest or his community's interests.
Right.
So there has to be a cohesive system where the people who are supposed to be the ones in power are adequate in ensuring that their leaders have what they need to advocate for themselves, for the broader community.
Now, I have lived 67, I've taken 67 trips around the sun. I have lived to the great year 67. I've seen a bunch of stuff in the journey. It has been an amazing journey. And I'm going to give you words that you're looking for. Well, not words, titles, the title of things. What is missing in our community is political education.
Yes.
It's political education. It's us talking amongst ourselves. It's us making sense out of stuff. Because we're getting a type of education that we can argue miseducation. But you're getting a type of education, but we're not getting a type of political education. We're not doing the Barbershop Series. We're not doing knowledge at this level. This seems new. This seems cutting edge. Cutting edge. And it is to some degree, but at the same time, one writer said there's nothing new under the sun. I don't believe that personally, but this has been done before. What you're doing has been done. There was a time when political education in our community was hot. This was what we did. This also the time when we were playing chess. It was hot. This was the conversation of the day. Now, we have to remember that we are living in a racial capitalist society. It's not simply capitalism. There's an element of racism, racial white superiority that is both of these at the same time. And I would suggest to you that they do not have an interest in your having political education, that they have done all that they could. I mean, I've lived where we were talking about do for self, and that meant our community doing. I've seen some, in the 80s, I seen where that changed. It went from do for self, which was a movement of all of us to do, to go for self, where that was, I had no brothers and sisters. There were a few brothers I have at my house. Everybody else is not my brother or sister. You're all on your own. And I've seen where this system pushed a line of thinking, and your best leaders were either taken out, put in jail, all kinds of stuff were done to your best leaders. And your worst charlatans were put forward as leaders. And these folks started leading you, misleading you, I would dare say, away from your true interests. And we started becoming dumb. We were dumbed down. Our thinking became dumber. We started going into material things, bottles and beads, pretty things that we put around our necks or anywhere. And the real things of life, we would put further and further and further behind. Those, and I mean, think of it. They made a real attempt to make fun of your churches, just as a place. And you'll never hear me join in with that type of stuff, because any comedian today who falls short and needs to make a joke is going to knock your churches. They're not going to knock your politicians, or they're going to knock black women. Any one of those three, if they're desperate and can't come up with anything, they're gonna knock you, they're gonna knock you. And we should never join in when we're laughing at ourselves or anybody laughing at us. We should say, wait a minute. The church has work to do. They got to they got a lot of work to do. But laughing at them that's not part of the solution. So I'm not gonna be part of that. And the politicals, I remember one time, forgive me for saying, I'll tell a quick story and then I'll leave you alone. I was out there and I was a school board member and I had no money. I spent 10 years on the school board, unpaid. The school board is the most thankless thing and the hardest thing, harder than the state senate, harder than any of these things. And I had no money and I was trying to put a message out. I had to run an election. And I managed to sneak someplace and make a whole bunch of flyers to give out. If I had got caught, I probably would have lost a job, but one story at a time. And I'm at the train station and it's kind of late and I'm handing out my flyers. And a guy comes down and he's with some other people and he takes my flyer and throws it on the ground. And he said, all of y'all are corrupt. And I said, excuse me, sir, have you ever met me before? No. Now I had to hold back my hammers because I was taught that that's not the way men react towards other men. And if you react in that fashion, you have to back it up. You don't go around disrespecting people. And funny. And you've never seen me before. You've never met me before. How do you know that I'm not a good person? And he muttered something. I said, brother, go ahead, have you a good day. Because it took everything I had not to educate him and give him a Rockaway education. Perhaps I should have, but I didn't. I hope that somehow we can't do that. We have to be, by saying everybody's corrupt, you're encouraging them to be corrupt. You're encouraging them not to do right. Well, if you feel that everybody, the world's against you, after a while, you're going to say, man, why am I trying this? I'm just going to go, everybody else seems to be doing it, I'm going to get in there. We have to catch our leader doing something right and then push that. I'm sorry to talk so long.
I agree. Yeah. I think it's just, it's education, right? Educating the community on, and unfortunately, it's propaganda, right? People watch TV and see what they see on TV, but solutions. You know what would change if people take 2 hours? That's all I tell people. Take 2 hours a month. I know everyone's busy. Take 2 to 3 hours a month on an issue that you care about and find an organization and participate in meetings. There's always monthly meetings around any topic you want. And if 10% of the population, 20% of the population, additional, would just take 3 hours a month, come sit with Senator Sanders meetings one day, maybe that's a town hall. Come go to Albany and listen to the legislative sessions and see what they're talking about. It will make a world of difference.
But you also have to, let me switch seats for a second. The politicians also have to bring some stuff home.
Yeah.
You can't expect the people to live on promises forever. Folks have to bring some stuff home. Amilcar Cabral, one of our great African leaders, said that always remember that people don't fight for ideas, for things in your head. They fight to make their lives better and their lives and their children better. We have to bring stuff home. In our district, we haven't really brought anything home since the days of Congressman Flake. And that is a doggone shame, and it can't go on. And people are voting. They're voting with their feet. They're voting by not voting. They're voting that you haven't done anything to help their lives, and therefore I'm not getting into it. And let me take a moment to differ with my great former President Obama, who came out the other day and was criticizing black men. He was criticizing them for not, for some of them, some, 25%, mind you, not rallying around Kamala Harris, and he said that they are being sexist. I think that he's oversimplifying the issue. I think that the issue is vastly more complex than just you don't like black women or you're scared of them or whatever. I think that the first and most important issue is we're not speaking to the needs of these communities. If, as our good sister Latoya brought up, if we're not speaking to the possible problems that we're having with the migrants, then we're doing ourselves disservice. We're doing a disservice because these are the folks who are trying to get apartments in our homes, and they are fighting with others, needy people still. Everybody needy. Not that they're deserving also. Not taken away, but I am stating a fact that there's only so much affordable housing, and people have to come back and fight for that. So by not addressing that, you're doing a great disservice. You have to speak to people. I'm glad that Vice President Kamala Harris has started to address this issue. She after it took too long to do, but she came up with a policy that they're going to look at all of the they're going to look at the job descriptions. And anything that doesn't need a college degree, they're going to get rid of that and open it up for everyone. That is an attempt to get the average or the everyday people who may not have that great college degree. And if it's a job that doesn't really need it, then why are you restricting it from it? That's the type of attempt that we need to do. We need to be speaking about ways of making capital, ways of borrowing money, so that these folks can create a business that they can move out of their mama's house or their papa's house, or don't have to live with some woman that they don't like and she likes with less than that. These things are real, and we're not talking about it. And this is to our detriment, and this is leading to a type of frustration where some black men, in their desperation, are actually believing that fellow Trump offers something to them. They want to. It's a cry for help.
Right.
They're crying out, and are we listening? And are we addressing their needs? And if not, they're gonna let another person who doesn't care if they live or die, but he will mutter some words that sound good to somebody, and they won't think it through. There's an African saying that says, when a dog gets his paw caught in the trap, he bites the first person that comes to help. He's acting from instincts. He's in pain and he wants to bite.
Right.
Our people are in such pain
Right.
that they're biting. Let's not spend more of our time saying how bad they are to bite. Let's look at what's causing the pain, and let's deal with that issue. Let's not get big now. Let's not get big. But let's look at getting their paw out of the trap. Then we can deal with the rest of this. And it does not help just knocking those poor guys and say, well, y'all don't like black women. Are there too many of them that don't? You don't want my opinion on that. You're not ready for my opinion on that. There are too many that don't like black women. There are too many that don't like black women. I'll stay there.
But can I ask, why are we so as a people? Why are we so? I don't know if the word is. Why are we insensitivized? Why are we so caught up with the race of the person, as opposed to what are the real policies? What are the real issues that each person is bringing to the table? Do you not think that? And as a millennial too, I'm going to address that to you as well. why are we so fixated on the race portion of it as opposed to the real issues of it? Like you said, um, if we're bleeding, right, and we're so deeply wounded, why aren't we trying to figure out how to stitch this bleed? Why are we so focused on the color? Because you said two things that like blew my mind. That
Only two?
well, no,
Then I'm
you said,
finished.
no. It's
Go
been,
on.
but the fact that you said that we're battling, like the fact that you used the word battling for democracy, when you said it, I shook inside because I'm thinking as a mother, a wife, you know, my children are going to feel this effect. So when you said it, it shook me to the core because I don't know if people really truly understand what that means, that we're battling for democracy. And then the next thing that you said that like had my brain swirling is, you're right. We're giving our votes away. If you're right now not registered, and thinking of not even, if you are registered, but you're thinking, well, this election doesn't matter to me, so I'm not going in on election day to vote. Essentially what we're doing is you're giving your votes away. And the fact that you said those words and the way that you said it, that I know a lot of people. I'm just running through different circuits and hearing different conversations. And for something that you just said, you know, in terms of because well, I don't know. People talk to say, I'm not voting, she's black, I'm not voting for her because she's a woman, I'm not voting, whatever the issue is, but I'll go with the other, but not really understanding the policies of what the other is. You're giving your votes away. So I want to go like one, I want to address the millennial aspect of it. And then I just also two, just run down to the people of why this is such a battle. Like, why are we battling? Like, what does era to present the rights? What does it mean if you don't show up to vote or if you're not even registered to vote? And if you could even talk about the process of registering to vote as well.
Yeah, so I think I want to go back first to the context of what the senator was talking about, the critique with Black men voting. Because we saw this in the prior elections, right? We saw this, people were surprised when, was it more than 10% of Black men voted for Trump the first time? And going back to speaking about people's interests, right? I think it's important to just highlight, for example, the issue of criminal justice reform. When you talk about Black men, like I just can't stress enough the issues. Like we got to get out of like the personality. Like, you know, Senator has a lot of people that love him because he has a nice smile and a good character, you know, but he also has people that love him because he's good on policy, right? So there's aspects to this. So I think that's important for people to understand what the issues are. And how people see themselves in the issues and how people identify who is going to help them with that issue. Everybody, and we're not a monolith as the African diaspora, right? We're not. So everyone's issue is different, right? And embedded, right? So I speak as millennials in the diaspora. Not all of us, but we're living in a different dynamic. Guys, you gotta remember, we've been through a lot of disasters. We even lived through 9/11. I mean, my generation, we were in high school when 9/11 happened. We survived natural disasters, Hurricane Sandy, lost cars and just named people and name it. And then we just came out of a global pandemic. Guys, like let's talk about what millennials have been going through since junior high school here, right? So we and where is our Great New Deal?
Right.
Where is our Great New Deal? Well, let me start by going back. The first person I voted for was President Obama, and I have to be very honest, guys. Obama, he talked about student loan debt. This issue, millennials have student loan debt. Black women have the majority of debt in student loan debt, right?
Yes.
Oh, so we've been promising to get rid of student loan debt since Obama was in office. I personally, my interest, just me as a human, as a voter, did not see a benefit in when Obama proposed student loan debt. Then this administration came in. What did they promise? They promised Accountability, we talked about accountability for Breonna Taylor. Did that happen? It didn't. What are we talking about? With the George Floyd Act, millions of dollars were poured into organizations to advocate for this issue, and what happened? Student loan debt. You're advocating that billions of dollars are being wiped away in student loan debt. I got a letter in the mail saying that I think lost. I'm asking people, who are these policies benefiting?
Right.
Think about it. I'll take myself for an example. I have $10,000, a little over $10,000 in student loan debt. I am not a homeowner yet. A majority of other baby boomers, other generations, you guys are in a different financial situation than, not saying millennials are not doing well with the new gig economy and technology and everything, but I'm saying it's not the same. So we have to address these issues. How is government supporting the economic mobility for the next generation?
The playing field is different. You're right.
So I would just love for folks to just talk about just the student loan debt issue alone. Now folks say, well, you know, those are Republican judges. There are Republican judges that block that. I would argue, where's your Democrat political power to override that? Where's the strategy? I don't want, it's not stopping Republicans from getting what they want for their issues. Why do we make excuses? And our lives depend on it. I watch people die. Senator, he can see people die just by the lack of ineffectiveness of government.
These are very worthy things you say, and I have to first date myself and say that what sits before you is the world's oldest teenager. So I have a whole different aspect on all of this. And it is true. And I went with Bernie Sanders. I did not go with Biden. I did not go with any of these other folks. I understood my interests, and I said that here is a person who has better equipped to deal with my interests. Notice, I went with a white man. He just happened to be a cousin of mine, Sanders. It's a big family, I'm sure. If I trace it. But be that as it may, it is true that the Republicans did block, that Biden, of all people, came up with the best policies that we have seen in the last 50 to 100 years, better than anything that JFK came up with, certainly better than anything Biden. Came up with, just his stuff was better for us. Now, it certainly was blocked. Now, part of that blocking, yes, it was Republican judges that blocked it, but it also had to be remembered that President Obama, when he was a president, did not fill in those judges. He had the opportunity to name many of the judges, and he left so many judgeships out there that Trump later comes in and fills with people who block what you're talking about. Now, yes, the Republicans should be held accountable, but we should not let Democrats off the thing either. President Obama, you were doing many things. Why you didn't take care of this, I don't know. But it's a complex system that we live in. Voting counts. You get the wrong person in there and they will send and block a bunch of stuff. Mistakes have been made. I was in favor of increasing the Supreme Court personally. There's no law that said it must be 9 people. At one point, it was 13 people. And it was changed to 9. Others could have expanded that and broke through a lot of these things. The bottom line is, we now have a generation of people who's likely expectancy or they will make less than their parents before them. They are, for all practical purposes, stuck. They are stuck at home with mama or stuck wherever they are. And it's not simply because they don't work hard or they don't have a dream or any of this foolishness. It's because a economic system has changed, has evolved, is moving, and we have not kept up with this move. And again, when America gets so cold, black people get pneumonia. We get it worse. Therefore, we have an interest in moving faster, harder, and more relentless on these issues. We should not leave us millennials out there by ourselves or the generation that X's and or anybody else. And part of that is a question of vision and leadership. And if your leaders are not addressing it, you need new leaders. And let's be clear. There's a couple of ways of getting elected. You can get elected because you are a party person. You will just do whatever they say, and the machine may elect you. Whose interest would you be in is a different story. I didn't say that. I'm just speaking of what's possible. If you are independent and you got it like that, if you're a Bloomberg, you can pay your way and just put $1 billion up and say, anybody who ain't got $1 billion don't get in the ring with me. And most people will say, you know what? You got it, money. More ways than one. You can buy your way. Another way is people's power, where we organize the people themselves. I ran against the machine. I always have. I mean, I was endorsed by them, I think, one time. That was brief. They endorsed me now. They endorsed me now. But I'm talking about really getting out there and doing some work. But the people's power. Once everybody, all of the powers that be were against us, looked bad for us. It looked like the smart money was betting against us. We took our message to where they never thought that people would come out. We took our message to the projects. We took our message to everyday pleasant people, to Farmers Boulevard, to Sutton Boulevard. We took our message to B.A.C.E, to the 40s, to all of these places where people write folk off. And we said, this is who we are. This is what we're about. We've never sold you short. We've never sold you out. If you like this type of leadership, I need you to come out. If you don't like this and you believe that they're going to do something for you, God bless you. Then either don't vote, which is a vote for them. Or, you see, not voting usually is a vote against your interests. The system does not want you to vote. If they had their way, you would not vote at all. It makes it easier to do dastardly things, to do demonly things against you. When you are aware and awake, yes, woke, aware and awake, and you watch over your interests, you can protect yourself. When you don't, then you are people will feast on you.
In light of what's happening, do you think we're waking up as a community?
I think, please.
I think we are. I think conditions have become so drastic that folks are starting to ask questions. And it's, people are starting to ask questions.
But do you think we're asking the questions too late in light of this election, or like where are we? What is the projection at this point? Because you want something as equally as important in terms of just the economic crisis that communities of color, particularly Black people, are facing in this country. So how far in are we? How deep are we? And how can we begin to work our way out of this situation?
Time for another story. This is a true story. At the fall of the Soviet Union, some Japanese workers came to what was the Soviet Union to a steel plant. And the Russian workers who had never been allowed out, they never saw the outside world. They saw the Japanese walking around the steel plant, and finally they rushed up to them and said, "Comrades, we know that we're behind. How far behind are we?" And the Japanese workers looked at themselves, looked at them and laughed and said, "You are behind forever. Ours is a situation of dire necessity. If we don't change this around, you're living in the day and age of AI. This is the day and age where automation means also they don't need that many workers. They don't need that many workers. The societies, when they get in a time like this, only got a couple of choices. They can throw the extra workers in jail. I mean, you know, they can do that. They usually come up with a war and do all kinds of stuff, but they don't need them. We need to get serious about this thing and move with such a fashion because we've got to get into the 21st century. Our people are not in the 21st century. Our people are still in the 20th century, and we could argue what year in the 20th century. We cannot live on the great stuff that people, the civil rights people did. That's good. They did fantastic. God bless them. But generations after that kind of let those people and these people down. They went for themselves. They may have done well for themselves, but they have certainly done a disservice to our generation and others. I mean, you know, with that as an understanding, you need a type of leadership that has a type of vision that is rooted to these communities, that can walk these streets without 10 to 12 people surrounding them and making sure nobody comes near them, that is not scared of the people. How you gonna lead the people if you're scared of them? That you will see in the 40 projects or Farmers Boulevard or something, or wherever our people meet. And I mean, wherever our people meet, that can be just as fine with a Jack and Jill meeting, which is gonna be one today, as they can be at a Barbershop Convo Series where you get your cuts right. You know, you need to, and if you don't find these leaders, you need to create them. You first need to educate yourself. Educate yourself to start by holding yourself accountable. Educate yourself. This is democracy. What does it, is there any other system? Which is the best? Educate yourself. Then, what type of leaders are you gonna come up with? What are the qualities of the leaders? Women and men have different styles of leadership. Women's leaderships are known as more cooperative. Maybe, just maybe, we need a more cooperative style at this period. Maybe, just maybe. I'm saying think out the box totally, and say what is useful right around now. Maybe we need less flamboyant. We have produced some of the most flamboyant. Our leaders can, we can rap. Oh, man, we can rap. We invented, but we also invented other things too, like math, science, and things of that nature. Are we gonna come together? Malcolm taught us that conditions are gonna force you to come together whether you want to or not. But we should not wait till that moment. Let's not be like our brothers and sisters, the Jews, who had great unity with that great cause. They came together after the gas. We should not wait till those type of moments. We should come together now. Let us organize ourselves so that we don't have to face those type of things. I'll drink to that.
I'll touch on that when we talk about solutions, right? So just that, the basic level, just organizing. And it just goes back to the mindset and culture, because even in our community, unfortunately, that's a problem. It's not as easy. We have to address it. And that's why I talk about, family, we talk about, especially starting with Black women and having that conversation with Black women as organizers. We can't organize if we can't work together. There's no loyalty, unity, and edification. We have to stand on morals and values and be in front of in order for that to be successful. It's very important. It's the only way. And oftentimes we can start off with a group, but then they'll break off. We're tribal. We work in silos, and you just never meet the mark that way. There's no other group. There's no other group in this country right now that operates like that. You think they're going to be successful?
Well, Black women have a triple oppression now. They are oppressed because they're Black, but they're also oppressed because they're women. But they are also oppressed because of the social class they come from. You don't have the problem that Oprah has. You don't, those are vastly different problems. You don't have the problem, and Oprah is minor in the world in their world. As working class women, y'all have to also have a job and organize your family and the community and only God knows what else. Y'all have a triple oppression. I have a double oppression. There are things that women need to organize first and foremost. And second, Black women absolutely need to organize. But I say this, women are smarter than men. Nobody is smarter than the Black woman. She has survived more than anybody can throw against her. She can out-organize, maneuver any group of people. Yes, you do see the men, but my God, Bello, Fannie Hamer, and these folk were fantastic, and really did much of the work that the fellows are getting credit for. When Black women get it together, the day will come. You have been hit with some stuff, but the day will come when y'all get it right, and this whole world will change. The South Africans used to have a saying that the women would speak at apartheid. They would say that when the system moved on them, they say, you have dislodged a rock, you struck a rock, and you will be crushed. You have struck the women. When the women get it together, this whole thing is gonna change. Malcolm X spoke of that. He said, if you ever find a society that's backwards, it's because the women are oppressed. You're not letting the women out. And if we are to solve this problem that we are, it's going to, a lot of these barbershop convos, it's going to take women saying, you know what? We're not gonna get into this catty business because this is what's been fed to us. We are more than that. We are far greater than those smaller things. We're going to turn to each other and not on each other. And when that happens, you see, let me tell you a secret about fellas. We're very flexible. We go with what works. If whistling works, we gonna whistle. But when we see that whistling don't work, we gonna forget how to whistle. We gonna forget how to whistle. When women put themselves in a position and say, we are only going to allow folk to talk to us who come with respect and decency. All of a sudden, it's gonna surprise you which person men suddenly discover better ways and respectful. This is not to say that the whole thing is on. Women hold up half the sky. half of what's going on is, and I would dare say, if the sky ain't falling, it's with women that held up a bit more than half the sky in this day. But the day will come, and black men should not be scared of this day. We should embrace it. The only thing that a weak woman can do for me is go get me a strong woman. She can't dang much that you can do for me. I need somebody who's got my back, not running or broke or whatever, or waiting for me. I don't have the answers all the time. I need a partner that help make who's right equal to me. I don't need nobody walking behind me. The only time I want a woman walking behind me if I think they're dangerous, then I do want her behind me because, well, because that's where she should be when the danger comes. However, her role is, if she sees me catching hell up there, to come up here now. Come up here now. Don't leave me down there. No, baby, you don't get up. Give it to me. Let me hear it. Strike that from the record. Don't strike me. I am James Sanders Jr.
Senator, I get from this conversation that there is hope. I want to walk away with knowing that there is hope and that there is still work to be done, and that we as a community need to galvanize. And I think that we need to break away from the whole aspect of male, female, and just focus that this is a human situation that can eventually lead to a global situation. So I think that with that said, I want to transition into just the importance of voting. What is the process? What must one do if they have not already gone through the process? How do they begin? Because the election is fastly approaching, right? So what can we do to give this information out and educate our communities as to the process of this?
Well, let me bring it on home in a very real way, because I'm running too.
Yes.
I'm running too. And if you like this type of leadership, then you need to support this type of leadership. If you like a leadership that nobody can buy, then make sure you come up with some money and move it, because he who pays a piper calls a tune. If you're not supporting your leader, somebody is. And if they got to choose between somebody who's going to be there for them and folk who are not, you don't want to see that choice. It's going to be a bad day. You have to, I think you have another week or so to register to vote. To register to vote. You'll correct me if I mess up. To register to vote. You can do it by mail. You can do it by in person. But you need to be registered. It's better to have and not need than to need and not have. It's better to have a weapon in a battle than not to have it. Whether you use it, that's what it's on you. But not to be registered is the worst situation, because you may see something at the last minute and say, you know what, now I need to go this way or that way. And if you're not the game, you can't do. So under those conditions, you need to be registered. Then you need to educate yourself. Who's out here? What do they stand for? What are your issues? What is important to you? And what is their position on these things? There's a lot of places where you could get information. You could be tuning into the Barbershop Series. You could be coming up to the great Moderator with her green wearing self. You get to all kinds of stuff to come in here. And then you need to not only vote, but hold them accountable afterwards. It ain't vote and go home and go to sleep. It's vote and let's make sure they do the things that they said they were going to do. Let's hold them accountable. Let's help them. Let's catch them doing something right. Not wrong, let's catch them right. You can encourage. That's the way you work with children. Catch them doing something right and encourage that. You see these kids all of a sudden start growing. When you say that, mommy, then you strive to catch your kid doing something right. They got to do enough wrong. You want to catch them. The same is true with political. Enough of that. Help me.
I would just add at the basic structure, folks that are in New York City and New York State, to just make sure you're registered, go to the New York City or New York State Board of Elections website. So New York City Board of Elections or New York State Board of Elections. We want to start by just making sure that you're registered to vote, number one. The second thing is just finding out where your polling site is. Because if you're registered, you have to go to the polls. So just make sure that you're registered to vote and then identify where your polling site is. And then do some research on the electeds, and who's running and how their policies impact your interests.
And catch up with Sister Latoya. If you don't know, she does. She's been taking knowing these things. There's plenty of folk that you can catch up with. And many of us are critics of this system.
Right.
I stand before you, before you as a critic of this system. I am not one who believes that this is the perfect system or that we have everything going right. Oh, no. I just choose to fight from within. But there are ways of fighting from without that are just as legitimate. Including creating a barbershop series.
And just to add, the voting age is
18 in New York State.
in New York State. So for those still high schoolers turning 18, right? Or
I think you can register, so you can, yes. So 16, I believe, what policy we passed 3 years ago. You can register to vote at 16. And you'll automatically be able to vote once you turn 18.
If you are 18 by the time of the election, November the 5th is the election. If you are 18 on November the 5th, you can vote.
Right.
If you're 18 somewhere right before then, yes, you can.
I just wanted to bring that home, because I know that there's a group of seniors, right? That say, if you think that you, as a young person, if you think you don't have a voice, then you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And it's crucial that we actually begin speaking on that level as soon as junior high school, as early as junior high school, so that we get more civic interaction, that these children are aware that you guys are going to be adults. You guys are going to be running this country in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So what better way but to start them young? So I want to take this opportunity to thank the Sanders for being here. Ms. Benjamin, thank you so much for joining us in this most poignant conversation, because again, I'm going to take away, I don't know if you guys want to have an opportunity to say what it is that you can take away from this, what you want to impress upon the people. But the fact that word is going to etch in my brain for the moment. So I thank you both for being here, and I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to give your last say.
I want to thank you for inviting us to this conversation. I think it's a wonderful idea. This is a part of the innovation and modernization that we need to see in our communities. And it starts with just having the conversation, right? Because we're not going to have an understanding unless we speak, have a safe space to speak about the topic. So I would thank you guys for your leadership. Again, my name is Latoya Benjamin. You guys could follow me. Our organization is called Economic Leadership Council. And I created this organization for situations like this, for us to have a safe space for leaders across the world to talk about how we can transform societies through conversation and innovation and economic development. So you can follow us on Facebook at the Economic Leadership Council. You can follow us on TikTok, Twitter, now called X at Economic Leader 2. You can also find us on Instagram at economic_leadership_council_. And then we also have another event. We have the Economic Empowerment Summit that we're doing in partnership with the NAACP and the fraternities next Saturday out at the Senior Center in Cape Perhaps. You'll find that information on our website. And I want to thank Senator Sanders, who serves as a mentor of mine, for his leadership and all his acts that he's been working on. Not really giving his back, the silent struggles and silent voices our the powerful sense of
Well, I want to thank first and foremost God and then the people of the talented 10 senatorial district. People that money can't buy. These are folk who have been bold enough to send this type of leadership forward and maintain this type of leadership. And I'm grateful that they were kind enough to do this. But I also want to thank y'all in this barbershop and many others for allowing me to do what's called grounding with my brothers and sisters. It is necessary that our leaders come before the people and listen. And listen. I mean, this is how we get our marching orders. This is how we know what's important. We can think whatever we want, but unless we know that folk can't get an apartment,
Right.
that folk just can't get an apartment, we may say that the most important thing is a job. And they may say, I can find one, but I need an apartment, an affordable apartment, affordable, not this phony affordable price that they're coming up with. Only Bloomberg can afford it. So we need to listen, but we also need to present ourselves. Leaders have to present themselves. They have to say, this is what I'm about. We can't be clever. We can't leave you feeling that no matter what your point is, we agree with you. We need to be as honest as we can and tell folk, this is where I stand right here. I'm willing to grow if you give me new information. If you can tell me something that I didn't understand before, then I'll grow. But if you don't, I'm kind of comfortable here. And a whole new idea of leadership. This male-centric class that came from a white supremacist society needs to be challenged. Malcolm X, and I'll close with this one. Malcolm X warned us, and he said, be careful about you integrating into a burning house. If we're buying stuff that doesn't work, and we're just continuing to do stuff, then we will do what Albert Einstein said. He said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That was Albert Einstein. And we seem to be doing it. We need some new thinking badly. It must come from the youth, from us youth. It must come from us. Your old people have got to get out of the way from us youth. You can't have this anymore. But Malcolm, let me warn you, Malcolm X taught us you can be young no matter what age you are, or old no matter what age you are. We can go out that door right now and see some chronologically young people who are old, just waiting for death, old and just waiting for the good Lord to call them home. They're old, their thinking is ancient, they're the walking dead. So let's not get hung up so much on age, but on stage. Where are they? And can we hold them accountable? And now as a political, I can go on and on and on and on. I'll never stop. But I will respect what y'all are doing greatly. And again, if you like the haircut, I got it here. Well, thank you very much.
So much. Thank you so much. I wanted to thank Nicole, who is, I would say their state is the mastermind behind this great conversation series. And I thank you for even welcoming me as part of your panel. It was great being a moderator. My name again is Sabrina Darius, and I think we have a part 2 coming up. So if you guys are tuning out, please be sure to sign back in at 4 p.m. for a wonderful conversation about perinatal loss and women's health and rights, which also will probably be a topic that we're going to be really looking to expand more, right? So I know that in the political realm, that's going to be also an issue. Like you said, look at what happened with the last administration, how women's rights was a big issue and how things are no longer in effect. So please join us for part 2 of it. And we look forward to having more robust conversations in the months to come. And if you haven't registered to vote, please go out and do so. Thank you, guys.
And that's it.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I was cognizant of the time for you guys. So we started a little later.
I am so rude, but that's all right.
I just
I
wanted
will
to
blame
make
Latoya.
sure. We did go into it.
You all did. I'm horrible. I will blame Latoya. I always do.
Well,
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
What an honor.
Yes.
To me, you kind of that and you didn't get the chance to add the reparations.
I know, I mean, it's just bring that to people.
That's a whole,
Yes.
that's a whole different conversation.
Yes.
That one don't cheat. You need to,
Senator, I'm looking forward to the update.
and you know